Welcome to another Solucru Talks. I'm Jonathan Sellers, CEO of Solucru, and I'm joined again by our Director of Digital Marketing, Seton T. Hart. Today we're going to discuss our tech stack that we use on every website we build for our clients and why, after years of research, we've narrowed it down to these technologies as the absolute essential stack to give you the best chance for success. So Seton, let's get started with the basics. What is the framework and why? We first of all, we build websites primarily on WordPress, which is, if you're not familiar with WordPress, WordPress is one of the most popular content management systems for building websites. But then when you are going to build in WordPress, typically you're going to be building using a framework, using a builder system. And so let's just jump right in there, right? That's kind of one of the most important pieces of the puzzle. So what do we use? How did we choose it? And why do we think it's so important?
No, of course. So there's a lot of page builders out there. We are familiar with many of them. We actually utilize many of the different page builders. But realistically, as a core to what we do, so sometimes we'll inherit a page builder because a client website was built on that. And they've contracted us to essentially help get their website to a better position without doing a complete overhaul. But when we build a website, typically the page builder that we use and that we've made part of our core package is Elementor Pro. And the reason we use Elementor Pro is right off the bat, it's optimized. The developers of Elementor Pro really take page speed into consideration. They've optimized their code. A very big part of a page builder that you want to see is that it leaves clean code behind. And I don't want to get too technical, so I'll give a very quick explanation. Essentially, if you use some page builders and you at a later stage decide you want to go a different route, what will happen is a lot of the pages you've built and the things you've built, the code it leaves behind is a mess because it relies on that page builder to actually display what it needs to display. Elementor doesn't do that. Elementor, if you decide you're no longer going to use Elementor, majority of the code stays clean and intact, meaning you can very easily transition to a different page builder. So that's the one thing, but that's not the reason we use it. The reason we use it is because they use all these best practices. They have really optimized the way the page builder works to allow for a lot less bloat on a website, because a lot of these page builders do add bloat because it's a jack of all trade solutions, or solution I should say. So that is why we go with Elementor Pro. They have given all this thought. They have established a lot of best practices, and it unlocks a lot of capabilities. So you do get a free version of Elementor, absolutely nothing wrong with that. However, if you really want to open up and unlock that toy box, Elementor Pro gives you substantially more tools. And because you have substantially more tools, you do not need to rely on other third-party products, other third-party solutions. You can actually have a bundle of tools that are native to Elementor, and that gives you a much more comprehensive website.
Yeah, so I know, at Solucru, we use an agency license. So that's how we provide that pro version for free, in effect for all of our clients, because we pay for an agency license. So we can build unlimited sites with what we have. But I think, over time we've seen sites, like you mentioned, inheriting, whatever a site setup was before. And we do see people will want some functionality, so they'll want something to happen, or they'll want something to look a certain way or display a certain way. And then you run into kind of a roadblock because maybe the free version of the builder you're using, or even Elementor free version, may not actually include that functionality you're looking for. And so we just eliminate that, right? So any site we're building in general, unless a client comes to us with a very specific reason not to use Elementor Pro, we're giving that, which really unlocks that, as you just said, the toy box of all this functionality and all these layouts, and obviously you're the expert more in this space, but the animations, just so many different things.
Yeah, essentially what we are doing, we are trying to prevent handicapping a website. It doesn't mean we only use Elementor Pro. We do a lot of custom solutions as well, depending on the website build, the client, what kind of package they've taken with us, or what agreement we have with them. But at its core, Elementor Pro just gives you a lot more functionality at the base level that immediately allows you to do things without having to use custom build solutions. And again, it adds a lot of elements and things that you would expect, and it runs within the Elementor framework.
Yeah, and I think you at the beginning of your reasoning for how we chose Elementor Pro, you were mentioning about efficiency and speed, optimizing for speed and things like that. So that brings us to our second, second piece of our tech stack. I'm actually going to combine two pieces because speed is so important. It's so important these days. First of all, you have the human component of people just don't wait. So if it takes a while for a site to load, they're gone, right? And so they never even see your site, and they're off at a competitor's site doing business with them. But then there's also the way Google looks at a site's performance and things like that, and values that you have a high-performing, clean site that's going to give a good user experience. So we use two other tools on almost every site. These are also premium tools that we provide our clients at no additional cost. It's just part of our service because, as you know, we do have the benefit of operating as an agency, and we have agency models with a lot of tools that we use. And so those are going to be tools that are specifically adding additional layers of optimization for speed. We have WP Rocket and we have Imagify, which is a little bit of a tricky one to say. But can you explain, Seaton, how do those work? Why does it matter? What's important about those two tools?
So let me start with WP Rocket and Imagify. It's owned by the same company. So they developed WP Rocket, and then eventually they added a image solution, which is Imagify. And the way it works, so you've touched on it, performance is critical with a website. You want a website to be quick, performant. You do not want it to be sluggish. We live in an age of instant gratification, and that's true even in business. People, when they go to a website, they expect to be immediately presented with the information they are looking for. So for SEO purposes, you get lighthouse metrics, which is what Google uses to ascertain whether or not your website is performant, whether it's taking too long to load. So what WP Rocket does is essentially it uses minification of code. So it's basically making the code a lot more efficient, a lot smaller to read for the browser, which means there's less time to load that code. And then it's also utilizing page caching, which essentially what that is, it's storing a version of your page that upon request is immediately presented to a person, instead of having to completely reload the page and reload all the elements. Because that's something people forget with a website, is every element, every animation, every video you add to a website typically would load. If you do not, when you reach a page, it would immediately load, and that causes a bottleneck. So what WP Rocket does is it's storing a lot of these things as a cached version, and alternatively, some of the settings we use also delay certain things. So for example, if something's not immediately visible on a page, so it's again what we refer to as below the fold, which would be you don't see it immediately on the page. You would have to scroll to see those elements. Then realistically, they don't need to load as soon as the page opens up. They technically only need to load when a user starts scrolling. So it delays some things from loading. It optimizes the way other things load. And then again, the preload, the cache, is storing a cached version of that page, which again, to simplify, just means you are eliminating all of that additional load you have to do when you reach a page or when a user reaches a page. Then Imagify, which again, the reason we use that, it's made by the same people that made WP Rocket. It means the two work hand in hand, with no additional setup required, with no complexity, or the two don't fight each other. They work efficiently together. So Imagify, essentially what it does is all the images on your website. We also live in an age where the preferred format is WebP, and then you've got even newer versions of image formats that are becoming prevalent. But the one that currently is most commonly used, next gen format, is WebP. And what Imagify does is, the first thing is you can set it to automatically convert any images you have to the WebP format, which is, again, it's preferred by Google. It's a next gen image format. It means the file sizes are a lot smaller, and just generally those images load more efficiently than the old JPEG formats or PNG formats. The other thing it then does is, again, you can set this. It's not just a setup and you set it and forget it. You do have to do a little bit of setup in terms of what you want the outcome to be. But what it does is it compresses images. So you can set it so that you can reduce the file size of images. Now, there is a caveat. You don't want to over compress images, because then you'll have images that are really pixelated or blurry, and that again is not favorable. You want your website to look aesthetically appealing. You want images to look good. But when you do the correct settings with Imagify and you really fine tune it, you will get it to a level where you don't lose fidelity in your images, but you have a greatly reduced file size. And again, when you have greatly reduced file sizes, it means you're using less storage space. You are serving the right image for the right format. So in other words, if you're on desktop, it's the right size for desktop. If you're on mobile, it's the right size for mobile. And ultimately what this means is your website loads faster and works more efficiently.
Yeah, so depending on who you are right now watching this video, you may be either totally confused about what Seaton's talking about, or you may be having some check marks going off in your brain right now, because you either are potentially a small business owner and you're wondering, why is my website not performing? And if that's the case, when we build a website for your business, right, you don't have to worry about this. This is just, we're doing all this. This is standard mode of operation for us. And these things stack up, right? So Elementor Pro, and then WP Rocket, and then Imagify, all these things, right, the choices of these things in order enhance the overall performance. If you're trying to build your website, right, you may be hearing some of the things Seaton says that maybe you've been trying to figure this out, right? So hopefully it will point you in the right direction. One word of caution I will say is, if you're not using Elementor Pro, you're using a heavy builder, right, an inefficient builder, adding WP Rocket or Imagify or something similar will not necessarily solve the problem, right? So it's the whole thing, right? You have to have an efficient structure of the site, and then from having an efficient structure, then you're able to continue to enhance the performance by using these other tools. So keep that in mind. So the next thing we want to talk about is also two things together, right? So when people are contacting you through a form, there's a lot of things at play, right? So there's various different situations a business could be in. Some businesses get a lot of leads, and they have challenges with how do I weed out bad leads. Some, businesses are getting people contacting them for a variety of reasons in the wrong place. There's all these different nuances. Every business is different. And then when people are coming and filling out your forms, contacting your business, everybody wants to know, how did they get there? And I think in general, Google Analytics will generally tell you, like, at the high level, how did somebody get there? But then you go back to the situation, if you get a lot of leads, you know that, for instance, 10 people came from Google's organic, 10 people came from Facebook ads, 10 people came from Google ads or something like that, right? So that's 30 people. So you generally know, right, what's happening. But I think the thing that people really need more and more to be able to make efficient decisions, especially when you're advertising and doing things like that, you're spending money to bring these leads here, you need to know exactly how they got there. So if you are running Google ads, you need to know that person came from Google ads specifically and searched this keyword. And then the second person specifically came from Facebook ads, and they interacted with a video ad 1 that's running in your account, right? So we have chosen a specific setup. We've tested many forms, and then we've actually built our own piece to do what I was just describing and get really granular and specific with the attribution of where people are coming from. So I think now, Seaton, let's dig into why we chose Gravity Forms as our preferred form and how that then integrates with our attribution technology.
Absolutely. Similar to Elementor Pro, Gravity Forms out of the box unlocks more tools for you, so it gives you more options with how to build forms so that you don't have to do a lot of custom build out. It's also built for efficiency. It works really well. It's trusted. It has countless installs, many positive reviews. And again, compared to some of the other form builders, it has a lot more functionality. There's a lot of form builders out there where it's the bare essentials. You also suffer quite often from deliverability issues on those forms. You have some bugginess, things just don't work like they want. And then also, as soon as we start talking about integrations, for example, you may want to integrate your form to MailChimp. You may want to integrate your form to a payment gateway. There are various things like that where you out of the box can do that with Gravity Forms. So it really gives you a lot of options. It gives you more than just a form. It gives you a lot of other methods that you may be wanting to contact people or build your community. And then, of course, as I mentioned, it unlocks a lot more functionality, and it is also very performant because these are guys that have been around for a long time. They've developed it, they've optimized it, and it really works well with Elementor and all these other tech stack that we use. Then on top of that, we have our custom attribution model, and the way we've built it just works hand in hand with Gravity Forms. We've built this attribution stack again in-house. It's totally custom, and we've built it to work with other forms, but we find the best results have been achieved when we utilize it with Gravity Forms. And then what that allows us to do is, again, give you that granularity we can give you a form that when somebody completes that form, you know where they've come from, you know what they were researching because it passes through the keyword, you know if you're running Google Ads, what campaign it came from, and you know even Facebook, it will tell you what creative led to that form submission. So those two really work hand in hand. And again, it just gives you so much flexibility in what you can do with the form, which ultimately allows us to also help curb spam, because we do know a lot of these other smaller form builders, typically they come with a lot of spam as well. The minute you use them, they targeted because they don't really take any measures to curb spam. They don't have things like honeypots and things like that out of the box, where Gravity Forms does have that out of the box. So it's not foolproof. Spam is an ongoing battle, but every single step you can take to mitigate that ultimately means you're going to have better quality leads and you're going to have less spam submissions.
Well, there you have it, guys. If you're asking yourself, why does my website suck? Hopefully this video gives you some insight into potentially some of the technology missteps you've made along the way, or whoever built your site made along the way. You know, we're always happy to discuss these type of questions, situations that people have, dig into your site, see if there's opportunities to improve the performance. Just get in touch with us, reach out to us on our website, solucru.com. As always, please like and subscribe to our channel and like this video so you'll get notified when we post our next Solucru Talks. See you then.